Hi chickpeas, welcome to another Self-Love September video. I'm going to be talking about work ethic today. Basically what I mean by work ethic is your principles and your ideals that you take with you into situations where you are working, where you are expending effort and energy in some way. So it can be the way that you respond to your professional life, by all means. It can be the way that you behave when you are in your place of work, but it can also be about the way that you behave when you are working on creative projects or collaborations or anything of that nature, things that you want to get to in your own time, things that you are working on aside from your main hustle. It can be to do with housework, chores, organising your space. So it's not just to do with strictly career stuff. Your work ethic is something that threads its way into anywhere where you are going to be expending effort to achieve a result, and it is distinctly different from your downtime, your leisure time, etc. So any instance where you feel like there's work to be done, whether that's chores, whether it's any of those kinds of things, administrational work, work that you do in your office where your actual job is or whatever, it's all work ethic and it all comes under that umbrella of work ethic. This was another request that I received when I did my Facebook Live asking for ideas to help me to understand what people would like to hear about during Self-Love September. So thank you very much for the person who requested this. I want to start by saying that your work ethic is your own. So you may find that you were raised in a family where there was a specific type of work ethic going on, and you were instilled with that same work ethic as your parents had, and your siblings were instilled with it as well. But actually you've come to this point in your life where you realise that it's very unhealthy for you, that it is not helpful for you, that you would like to see work and the work ethic in a different way that is more in keeping with your life and how you want to be happy in life, how you want to succeed in life. You might find that if you were raised by a parent who absolutely worked themselves into the ground and felt a lot of shame about the idea of even thinking about being sick for a day, they really just powered through, they worked through all kinds of illnesses, they pushed themselves, you might find as you've grown up that you have a lot of shame around the idea of taking a personal day, asking for compassionate leave, realising that you are too ill with the flu to go into work. You might feel a lot of shame around that because your learned work ethic from your parental conditioning has told you that you are not allowed to be ill, you're not allowed to slow down, you've got to work to the bone. And so for you, it might be about re-establishing your connection to your work ethic. So it's about what makes sense for you. And you may very much feel that the way that your parent behaved with work was unhealthy, and you don't want to keep adopting that same work ethic. You want something that's different for you. There are loads of people who have the complete opposite experience, where a parent had a very sort of lax work ethic. They really didn't get to the things that they kept saying that they wanted to do. There was always an excuse, there was always a distraction. And maybe you recognise that you have inherited some of those traits. And if you haven't seen my Self-Love September video from this year about inheriting parental traits, I will leave it down below for you. Definitely check that out if you feel like you recognise that, yeah, you do have certain work ethic traits that were inherited from your parents that are not useful and not healthy. So if you find that your parent had a very weak work ethic, very work shy, not really getting to the things that they kept saying they wanted to do, you might find that that's something you exhibit now in your life that you really don't like. You want to get rid of it, you want to have a stronger work ethic. Don't forget that a lot of people also set their work ethic up as a direct reaction against whatever they were taught by their parents. So if you had a parent that was a workaholic, then you might be very, very lax with your work ethic and your response to work as a reaction to that workaholic parenting energy. And you might find that you actually want to pick up a little bit of your parents' work productivity, that you don't want to keep reacting against it by being lazy and by always finding a reason not to work. So I say all of this to say that your work ethic is your own. You do not have to stick with the work ethic that you were raised with. You may also find that you have a different work ethic to the cultural norms that you were raised in, to your family overall. There are also a lot of different fads and fashions that come up in the way that we actually address work ethic in culture, the way that we write about it, the things that we say about it. And some of those attitudes might go against the kinds of things that you want to instate in your work ethic. So give yourself permission to set up a work ethic that is correct for you, that feels right for you. And in this video, I'm going to be talking to people who might be finding that they push themselves too far with work, as well as people who find that they don't do enough work and they're not productive enough. I'm going to be talking to people from across the spectrum. The advice that I'm going to be giving is intended to be able to hit as many different people as possible. So this video isn't just for people who work too hard. hard, and it's also not just for people who find that they're lazy and they don't work enough. It's for people across the spectrum who find that work ethic is not quite where they want it to be, and they want to be able to tweak it so that it feels better. Take a look at your attitude to the concept of downtime and ask yourself, what does your downtime look like in your life? Are you getting enough downtime? And by downtime, I mean the unwinding time, the relaxing time. If you look at your life over the last few weeks or the last few months and it's sorely lacking in downtime, then you may have issues with work ethic that need to be tweaked. If you look at your life over the last few weeks or the last few months and you feel like there is an uncomfortably large amount of downtime, then again, that might be a signal that it's time for you to reassess your work ethic and think about how you want to bring it in keeping with what you're trying to achieve, you know, and your best version of yourself, basically. Many people conflate downtime with leisure activity. So they might see their hobbies as downtime. They might see their social interactions with friends and family as downtime. They might include dates in their downtime. I would strongly recommend against this. I think the best way to think of downtime is as your chill time, your decompressing time. So lying in on the weekend would be downtime, where you just spend more time asleep. Lying in front of Netflix vegetating is downtime. Maybe just chilling, reading a book on your own is downtime, you know, just calming time. You could definitely count having a walk around the block or walking the dog as downtime if it's something that you enjoy and it's just a really chill time where there's no real plan, there's no stress. It's just something that you are doing in a very relaxing, re-energizing way where you are charging your batteries, basically. You're on charge. Most people, even the most extroverted of people, are not necessarily fully on charge when they are out at a nightclub dancing the night away. Most people are expending some kind of vital life force when they are on a date with somebody or having a family lunch. So those things are not necessarily downtime. We can't count them in the same category. Maybe you want to get to your hobbies, your passions, those leisure activities. Maybe it's dance classes, maybe it's painting, whatever it is. I would recommend that you think of those things as your hobbies and your leisure activities and your social stuff. All of that is together as a form of energy expenditure, whereas downtime is just like where it's like, that's how I can describe it. It's like a, ooh, yeah, there we go. Just kind of locking into not doing much, just relaxing, resting the brain, just chilling, you know, very much kind of grinding to a halt, having that downtime. There are honestly way too many people who pack their weekend out with all kinds of stuff. They go rock climbing, they go on a date, they do this, they go for drinks, whatever else. And then they find themselves slumped over their desk in the office on a Monday saying to themselves, I don't feel refreshed, I don't feel rejuvenated. I've just had all weekend to rejuvenate and refresh, but I don't feel that way. Well, that's because there was a very sore lack of any real downtime. We can't just fill our calendar up with social activities and leisure activities, hobbies, interactions, and then expect that we are going to feel super re-energized and fully recharged afterwards. We all do need to have that battery recharge time where we're just plugged into the wall. You know, there's no apps on, there's nothing like that. I'm using a phone analogy. I'm using a smartphone analogy to explain the importance of downtime. So basically, you're just on charge, you know, you're not operating anything. You've not got a million windows open. It's just, you're on charge. And whatever that means for you, I would recommend that you make sure you're factoring enough of that good stuff into the schedule. Some people are going to get more downtime than others depending on what's going on in life and what's actually realistic. If you have a newborn baby, then you've already in your mind kind of made that connection between having that baby and understanding that you're not going to get the degree of downtime that you wish that you could for a while. And that's something where you kind of have to recognise that downtime is not something that's always going to happen to the same degree in the same way throughout your life journey. You have to be flexible with it. Lots of people have to find the sweet spot between what is needed and what is possible, but I think people that completely dismiss the value of downtime altogether are going to have the worst time when it comes to work ethic, because if you're not getting any time to relax, particularly if you're losing hours of sleep, if you're not getting a decent amount of sleep, then that's really going to affect the amount of energy and attention and vitality that you can bring to your work, because your body is craving that downtime, your mind is craving that switch off time. So to the extent that you can get downtime, and don't make excuses for why you can't. Yes, there's sometimes some excuses why you can't have the degree of downtime that you want to have. There are definitely times in life where it's impossible for you to have the degree of downtime that you may sense that you physically need, and you will have to make up for that later. But if you're completely scrubbing downtime from the schedule and convincing yourself of its lack of importance, work ethic is going to suffer. If you don't give yourself some form of downtime, you're going to resent the work that you're doing when you are in the midst of doing work anyway. You're going to feel resentful, you're going to feel fatigued, you're going to know that you don't necessarily have the energy to give to the project, to the chore, to the task at hand, and that's going to make the whole experience way more yucky than it would be if you'd given yourself adequate downtime. If you're not happy with your current work ethic, you may find that your ego is holding on to it for one reason or another. So if you know that you're constantly working, you're pushing yourself too hard, you're trying to do too much, you're constantly busying yourself with one task or another, you may find that your ego is holding on to how it feels when you do that. And your ego does not want to give up on that sense of identity of self as being very hardworking, very prolific, you know, and maybe you're seen that way in the eyes of others. So it becomes much more difficult to let go of that habit that you now recognize is negative and unhelpful, because if other people see you as productive and capable and strong and impressive, then of course your ego wants to hold on to that. Of course your ego is getting a high from that, and so it's difficult to let it go. If you see yourself as very chilled out, very easygoing, very freewheeling, very liberated, your ego might be holding on to that identity. So the idea of being super productive, getting serious about things, getting all your ducks in a row, and really kind of putting the pedal to the metal might feel like it's contrary to the sense of self that you've set up, this idea of yourself as being somebody who's very go with the flow and things will come together when they need to, and you know, I don't really need to be stressed, I don't need to be anal about things. I think sometimes the idea of shifting your work ethic so that it's more in keeping with what you want to achieve can be difficult, because your ego doesn't want to let go of the way that it sees itself, and the ego in essence is the way that you see yourself. So it can be very difficult to make changes that challenge that. That's why it's really important to get real about why you want to change your work ethic. It's not enough just to decide that you're going to make those changes. It's better to get specific about why. It's really good to get specific about what you want to achieve, how you're going to feel when your work ethic has significantly shifted and you feel like you're getting done the things that you need to get done, you're relaxing adequately, you are living life in a way that feels better. So if you can get very specific about why that needs to happen, and you can actually write down a list of the reasons why that needs to happen, or even some kind of tasty description of how things are going to be in your life once that has happened, it will give you the motivation that you need to keep striving for a work ethic that feels better for you and feels more natural for you and feels more in keeping with what you're trying to do with your life. As many of you know, I'm a file of facts girl. I'm really interested in paper planning. I'm interested in the way that we set up schedules and routines to maximize our time. It's not something that I'm completely perfect at. It's definitely something that I still struggle with, but actually kind of investing in a good paper planning system and learning what I can about scheduling and sort of routines and things like that has been really fundamental for me in leveling up in business and in my life and everything like that. So it's been amazing. And my ego definitely did not see itself as being a file of facts owner or somebody who watches videos about paper planning setups and routines and how to maximize your use of time, how to leverage time. I was like, that kind of thing just didn't seem to be who I was in my soul. My Sagittarius sun was like, no, but my Virgo moon was like, uh-huh. It's very, very weird when you kind of level with yourself and say, look, as much as you see yourself as being this kind of person, you are really fucking up your opportunities and the possibilities for your life. And so you really need to start to kind of tune in to being more like this. And it's going to take some work and it's going to take some adjustment, but your ego cannot be allowed to stand in the way of you doing something that is going to be super helpful for you in terms of, especially in terms of your work ethic. Work ethic is a big deal. It's the difference between looking back over the course of your life and deciding that it was well spent and then not, you know. A lot of that is work ethic. It's the way that you respond to what you've set up for yourself to do, whether it's what you do to pay rent, whether it's what you do to get your house in order, whether it's what you do to make sure that you build that boat or you write that novel, whatever it is, it all all really lends itself to your work ethic. So if you know that your work ethic needs to change, try to be specific about why that is and what you're trying to achieve. For me, it was a lot to do with wanting to feel like I was in the midst of my creative pursuits even more, and also that I had leveled up professionally, that I wasn't scared of my business anymore. I was making it work and I was being prolific within it. I've had a few interesting conversations with clients over the course of time that have basically been about the realization that you can throw all the techniques that you want at the situation. You can read all the books and the articles that are there for you about the issue that you're having. You can delve into different exercises, resources, worksheets, cheat sheets, whatever. But when it actually comes down to it, when you are in that decision-making process of are you going to do something or are you not going to, all it takes is true grit. You just have to fucking do it. You just have to get out of your own way in that moment, take a deep breath and know that although it's hard to get that groove in the wood, that's what you're going to do. And if it takes for you to feel uncomfortable in that moment of doing that thing that you are resistant to doing, then so be it. That you know in your mind that discomfort does not necessarily mean that you're doing something that isn't self-loving. Sometimes we need to make ourselves feel uncomfortable in order to shake our lives the fuck up. So the main message that I want to get across to you is that if you know that your work ethic has got to change in some way and it's difficult for you to make that change, the reality is that at some point you're going to have to do the thing that begins that change that you want to make. And there's really no amount of resources like the one you're watching right now that are going to be there with you holding your hand in that exact moment when you decide to do something differently. You just have to decide to do something differently. You have to find that spirit of the lion within you to actually do it. Sorry to have to go into motivational speaker mode there, but that's really the essence of it. There's only so much that anybody can tell you about leveling up with your work ethic, getting things done, doing what you've got to do in life, before you actually recognize that it's really just you, yourself, making the decision to either continue down a path that's not fulfilling you or get the fuck out of your own way and do it. And in the end, it comes down to the true grit that is required to do the thing that you're scared of doing. And so that's one of the main things I want to say, because it really is an important part of the story. I don't think the video would be complete without leveling with you on that. Recognize some of the toxicity that's around you when it comes to attitudes regarding work ethic. I talked about a little bit of that right at the beginning of the video when I mentioned, you know, being potentially raised by a parent who's scared of taking a day off sick. There's a lot of that kind of thing in a lot of the cultures that we were raised in. This idea that we've got to keep going and we're not allowed to admit that we feel ill or we need some time for ourselves, that kind of stuff. Recognize that kind of toxicity. Recognize anything that you consider to be toxic or damaging or unhelpful for you about the response societally or familiarly to work ethic, and make sure that you are taking responsibility for deciding that your work ethic is not going to include those things, that you're going to recognize those things, you're going to see them, and you're going to decide, okay, you know what, that's not helpful. I've recognized that that is a thing that happens in this family or in this culture or in this work environment, and that's fine, but I'm not going to ingest that crap because for me it's poison. So you carry on, but I'm having my own response to work ethic and it's what's right for me. Do not forget the body. This is a really important part of the conversation and I think we try to overlook it a lot. You are in a physical vessel. You are riding around in this little meat suit. Your experience is dependent upon this meat suit. So don't tell yourself that you can fill it up with crap that offers you no sustenance, or you can dehydrate it or deprive it of sleep and then force it to, you know, create the work ethic that you want, force it to produce the results that you want to see. You've got to be putting good stuff in. You've got to be giving it the sustenance that it requires to provide you with the energy to do the things on your list. You've got to recognize that you've got to work in tandem with your body and not against your body. And that is a big part of the self-love journey for a lot of people for all kinds of different reasons. There's a bunch of reasons why somebody might struggle with their relationship with their body in terms of what they put into it and how they treat it. And I've been through my own struggles on that score, and I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but if you know that you're trying to craft your work ethic a certain way whilst treating your body in the same old way that you've always treated it, it in an unself-loving way, then you really need to think about that and make the decision that you're going to start to make changes. Finally, don't forget that you can use archetypes to inspire you to adopt a better work ethic. And I talked about archetypes earlier in Self-Love September. I will leave the link to that video down below. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Archetypes can be really, really inspiring. They can be on side, they can be allies for you in your vision of creating the work ethic that makes more sense to you and is going to get you further down the road to success. It's going to make you feel better about your life. Sometimes just identifying with an archetype that represents how you want to be in terms of work ethic is super useful. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching this resource. I hope that it's helpful. Please share it with anyone that you feel needs to hear it and needs to imbibe it. Anybody that has a difficult relationship with their work ethic and you would like to give them something helpful and of value, I hope that they will also find something insightful in the resource as well. I've got one more video coming for SLS, guys, so do look out for that. And then it's on into October. Boldly we go towards Witch's New Year. Much love and self-love until the final installment, and blessed be. Mwah.